It's the big wake-up call on AM 1280 WBIG. I'm Ryan Gatenby, and our next guest is a singer, songwriter, musician, member of the Bangles, member of Ming T, Sid and Susie, and a brand new solo album, Someday, just out yesterday. We are talking with Susanna Hoffs. Hi, Susanna.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, so great to be talking to you today. I'm sure my 19-year-old self is, hey, I'm talking to Susanna Hoffs. I bet you get that a lot.
Oh, thank you.
So the brand new album just out yesterday, getting some great reviews. And
Yeah.
looking through the track listing, I notice you got a couple of co-writes on here with Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, actually, there's one song that I started with Mike back in 1989. The Bangles had crossed paths with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers many times during the 80s, and eventually we actually did sing backup on one of their records, so it was pretty great. And Mike Campbell had reached out to me to write, and so we started this song, Raining, way back then, and I rediscovered a cassette of it in a box when I was kind of archiving through old material that had never made it to an album, and I found that song and did a rewrite of it to sort of bring it up to date. It had been such a long time piece of the past, really, and that was really exciting. And the whole process of making this record has just been a thrill, and I'm really happy that it's finally seeing the light of day.
Now, did you keep crossing paths with the Heartbreakers because you guys were like borrowing each other's Rickenbackers?
Oh, and thank you for knowing that we both play Rickenbackers. That's an awesome fact, actually, that I have been a Rickenbacker girl forever, and I think that comes from falling in love with the Beatles. That was my first music.
Susanna, are you there? Oh, we lost Susanna Hoffs just as she was going to talk about the Beatles and Rickenbackers. Oh, my goodness. Well, I tell you what, we will try to reestablish contact, and we will be back right after this. The big wake-up call, AM 1280 WBIG, and we're back with Susanna Hoffs. We're in the middle of talking about Rickenbackers, and something happened with the phone line. I believe it's those gremlins for those inferior bootleg guitars trying to disconnect it. But you mentioned, you've always been a Rickenbacker because you fell in love with the Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been talking a lot about the '60s lately. I think that partly because it was such a big influence on the new record that I've just made, and I guess it's always been the '60s for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the era that you know when you first fall in love with music, it just stays with you. But obviously, there are many people who love the Beatles as much as I do. But yeah, that's when I first noticed the Rickenbacker guitar, and John Lennon played it, and George Harrison played them sometimes. He played a lot of different guitars, but yeah,
right.
There's a club of us that really love that jangly sound.
And then you worked with Mitchell Froom on this new album, and I know he, of course, worked with Paul McCartney. I'd be bugging him for McCartney stories the entire time. I would probably drive him insane.
Well, I probably drove him insane too because I was getting a lot of great stories from him as well. I think it's so interesting when two producers I've worked with have also worked with Paul. This is a conversation we have, is like they're in awe too. Like they imagine being the guy to go in there and say, "Hey, Paul, would you do it again, or do it this way or that?" To give suggestions to someone like Paul McCartney. I mean, who wouldn't be like overwhelmed with that task? So that's what I found, that even people who've worked extensively with Paul, still, of course, it's Paul McCartney from the Beatles. You kind of can't even think straight, I imagine, when you're standing in a room with someone like that.
But I would think Mitchell would have a little more tolerance. You guys go way back. He worked on some of the early Bangles records.
Yeah, I actually met Mitchell because he played the signature keyboard parts on Manic Monday, which was the song that Prince gave us back in the 80s. And that's when I first met Mitchell. And we just seemed to keep running into each other over the years. And we realized that we live a few blocks away from each other. So He's married to Vonda Shepard, who did all the great music for Ally McBeal. I don't know if you know Vonda, but Jay and I always see them at restaurants, and it was running into Mitchell yet again that brought us together on this project. I had just written a bunch of new songs I was really excited about, and I mentioned it to him. I ran into him at a really wonderful venue called Largo in Los Angeles, and he said, I want to hear them. I didn't have any demos, so I just went over there with a guitar and my songwriting partner, just the two of us with guitars, and we played the music, and that was the beginning of this album. So I really am grateful to him for his brilliant arranging, and he did all these incredible orchestrations for the songs that I'm very proud of.
Now, when you're writing an album nowadays versus back probably doing demos on 4-track cassettes, do you think technology makes it easier to write songs, or in some ways is it more intimidating because there are so many more effects and gadgets you can have that sometimes I think we can get obsessed with those?
Yeah, I mean, actually, we did this in a very the one bit of technology that was life-saving, and this was on my iPhone, a little microphone. That's all it was. We would sit down to write songs, and I didn't use any fancy technology. I just used my iPhone. I would just press little record button on this microphone app, and I would log all the different versions of the songs. And I stay in shape by walking every day. It's kind of my religion in a way. I just get out there and I walk, and I would listen. I would sort through all the versions of the songs and kind of work out and start getting lyrics. And, it was really a useful tool, but it was not anything fancy. But, of course, in recording the album, we used really nice vintage gear. I sang live in the room with the band, which was really exciting and fairly pressure-filled to kind of go for it with every take, because we wanted to capture that, a kind of the spirit of the 60s and how we did it. But I sang on this beautiful vintage microphone, but we used Pro Tools. So it's a combination of things that I find work really well these days.
I find some people, you can either curse technology or you can embrace it, and maybe a combination of the old and the vintage, I think. Whatever gets the job done, I think, to make a good record.
I think that's what I'm finding with most of the people that I work with. Don't get rid of that great vintage gear. If it's something great, keep it. But the Pro Tools is an amazing technological advance. I mean, the fact that, especially with the music business being so changed, that so many of us just make our own record. We don't have record deals in the way that we did back then. There isn't a lot of support, so being able to literally make a record in your bedroom if you had to, because the Pro Tools are very small. If you have a laptop, you can do it.
Are we going to see tour dates for this album? Will anything
yes,
bring you to Chicago?
For sure, in the fall. I actually just met with I just have this show at the Grammy Museum that they so generously allowed me to have my record release there, and all the agents from the new agency that I'm working with were there to see the show. It was very exciting, and we're working on dates for the fall for small venues. I really love to play small venues, and it'll be a lot of fun. I've already done a few little sort of warm-up of what the fall will be, very intimate settings and really nice back and forth with the audience. It's really refreshing to do it that way.
Well, we look forward to seeing you in Chicago. The new album is Someday. We've been talking with Susanna Hoffs. I'm so glad you could be on the show today. Good luck with the new album, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
The big wake-up call.
And what are you fighting about today?
You don't know me like you think you do.
AM 1280 WBIG.